it helps me. It's totally appropriate, unless as long as I'm telling you, The Great Gatsby and its relationship to the concept of white privilege, the Black Lives Matter movement, and to some extent the other injustices. Of course, I first read The Great Gatsby with Father Schuler, and I know I say that a lot. I can't believe how many novels we read. It's staggering. I was actually going to count. I think we read 14, 15 novels as sophomores. That's insane. The irony of Gatsby for me is that anybody who reads The Great Gatsby in high school at a basic level, the thesis is Gatsby searches for the American dream. If you go to Spark Notes, Cliff Notes, you go to Wikipedia, it will say The Great Gatsby is a novel of a man in search of the American dream. Well, then what is the American dream? (1926), New York City, all-white society. What is the American dream? What is the American dream coming off of Ellis Island? What is the American dream coming from the Puritans and the Mayflower? What's the American dream? Don't act like there's a right or wrong answer here. What is the American dream? How's it been told to you?
Isn't it like liberty or like freedom or something?
Not bad, Gracie. The Puritans came over for religious freedom, even though the irony is they started to persecute others. Anybody else want to take a stab at the American dream, a definition of? Because there is one word that will predominate the conversation. And once I say,
isn't it like
go ahead.
To have like a better life?
That's it. It's called opportunity, the land of opportunity. In the immigration from Ellis Island, when America opened up its gates to European immigrants in the late 1800s, very late 1800s, 1890s, through about 1930, knowing that I told you my grandfather, Martin J. Luxo, came to America in 1924. That's not that long ago. He fought against Americans in World War I. He killed Americans. He got shot twice by Americans. But why did he come to America in 1924 on a boat where he met my grandma? For opportunity, economic opportunity, the opportunity to improve your life because of the incredible suffering in Europe, poverty, poor standard of living, and to escape injustice. I told you, if you really, really paid attention, but, you know, there's a lot going on. My uncle Ladislav, in American, his name would be Lawrence, he left Slovakia, which is a neighboring country to Germany. He left a part of Europe called Bratislavia. My mother would know, between 1932 and 1938, he emigrated to Chicago to attend the University of Chicago, became an economics major and a real estate developer. He built many homes in Chicago because he was afraid of Hitler, because of Hitler's rhetoric on the radio. So, two reasons to emigrate to America: an opportunity of economic wealth and economic growth, improvement, and to better your life financially, or to improve your life as a human rights, justice, and escaping tyranny, dictatorship, and religious persecution. That explains all of the European immigration in a nutshell. That explains the Puritans who first came here approximately, well, Jamestown was established 1616. The Boston colony was established 1640. Slavery came 1619. The Trail of Tears began with the European conquerors in 1640. The first European conquerors that came to meet to either coexist and or destroy the native cultures began in 1640. That's history. And the Trail of Tears is the systematic destruction of the Cherokee Nation over the course of hundreds of years, starting under the George Washington presidency through Thomas Jefferson, finalizing in the presidency of Andrew Jackson, known slave, well, they were all slave owners. Andrew Jackson despised Native Americans, and he attempted to eliminate, well, he did eliminate, he eliminated the Cherokee Nation was the state of Georgia. That's a lot of land. And he put them in camps and on reservations, and many of them they perished, and now they're still paying that price. They never recovered culturally, economically, etc. So here's what I want to do, and I need discipline. I need this group to promise me, because it could fail. What I want to do, it could just fail. I want to attempt 10 Google Hangouts, Tuesday, Thursday, Tuesday, Thursday, Tuesday, Thursday, Tuesday, Thursday. And I want to read The Great Gatsby to you, or at least this. This is a Mr. Edwards strategy. I want to at least read a portion of each chapter to you, outline it, study it, examine it. And if we get worn out, then you read the rest for homework, meet me halfway. If it's a 10-page chapter, if I read 5 pages, then you read 5, and then we meet in the middle. Now, again, why I was up to 4 a.m., unfortunately, The Great Gatsby's not on the CPS virtual library, which I find to be mind-blowing. Huckleberry Finn is. And it's not on Apple for free, and it's not in the public domain for free, even though it isn't. Novels, most masterpieces of literature are now free. They're no longer copyrighted. They're owned by the world. So I thought I could find a very easy ebook for Gatsby for you to download. And this is what I found. And that's why I researched, and then it was 4 a.m., and then I had to go to bed. But what I found was a book service called, I think it's called Planet Books. I did find one very readable copy of Gatsby. I just don't know how long it's going to be there. When I went to the website, they wanted me to put in a credit card. But I also found I don't know if it's a PDF, but I found a copy of the book on a Google search of Gatsby, and I will show that to you now. I'm going to go to present mode. And I have to take attendance today. You're my core team. So watch this magic trick. And I understand, Mr. Edwards, you know what? Gosh darn it. I got to work also. I get it. But you are now the core team. I got to have 28 in AP literature. I can't have 29. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's 9 of you. If 9 of you do my summer curriculum, you'll have such a leg up that I guarantee you pass the exam. Right now, 9 out of 28 can pass. It's pretty good. That's 35% of the class. Because you will learn. All right, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to, you all take notes And I don't want to keep saying it every 5 minutes. You need to take notes. You need to do what I do when I do it. I'm going to go to The Great Gatsby. I'm going to go to Google. Just keep it real. Just always start at Google. And then just Google The Great Gatsby and see how much Googling I did already. I got very frustrated when I could not find Gatsby, but when I scrolled to page 2, it's coming. I found this. The Great Gatsby Planet ebook. I can only open it. I can't. Here's the website. I can't open it from the website without a credit card. But here, it's completely downloaded. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is an extremely readable copy of The Great Gatsby. And as noted, I said 173 on my iPod last night. It was my iPad. It was 173, but it looks like it's 193. Maybe I was just tired. That's not the end of the world. Now, here's what I want to do. There's 10 chapters, 10 Google Hangouts, 5 weeks, and then we'll regroup. See, I appreciate you all. Whether or not you appreciate me or each other, I'm going to take on faith and assume the answer is yes. But I just don't see how else you're going to read this material. Now we have the time before the next round of chaos. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do a sound check, and then you tell me if you can clearly hear me. You don't have to be upset about hurting my feelings. If I'm too loud, if I'm too soft, you just tell me. But I'll just start speaking right now. I'll just do a stanza of the Raven, and then you tell me if that's appropriate for you to listen to this book while I read. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary, over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore. Do you like that sound, that noise level, that decibel level? Yes?
That's good.
Okay, thanks, Keith. Listen to me carefully. Let me read you chapter 1 of Gatsby. Let's just look at it. It is going to be approximately, there's chapter 2. It is give or take 26 pages, but let me read until I get to a point of like, oh, I'm tired too. Everybody can see that? Okay. Oops. You know I can't scroll. That's not fair to me. All right. Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. His great uncle wrote The Star-Spangled Banner. Starts with a quote. Then wear the gold hat, if that will move her. If you can bounce high, bounce for her too. Till she cry, lover, gold-hatted, high-bouncing lover. I must have you. Thomas Park d'Inville. Chapter 1. In my younger and more vulnerable years, my father gave me some advice that I've been turning over in my mind ever since. Whenever you feel like criticizing anyone, he told me, Just remember that all the people in this world haven't had the advantages that you've had. He didn't say any more. We've always been unusually communicative in a reserved way. And I understood that he meant a great deal more than that. In consequence, I'm inclined to reserve all judgments, a habit that has opened up many curious natures to me and also made me the victim of not a few veteran bores. The abnormal mind is quick to detect and attach itself to this quality when it appears in a normal person. And so it came about that in college, I was unjustly accused of being a politician because I was privy to the secret griefs of wild, unknown men. Most of the confidences were unsought. Frequently, I have feigned sleep, preoccupation, or a hostile levity when I realized by some unmistakable sign that an intimate revelation was quivering on the horizon. For the intimate revelations of young men, or at least the terms in which they express them, are usually plagiaristic and marred by obvious suppressions. Reserving judgments is a matter of infinite hope. I am still a little afraid of missing something if I forget that. As my father snobbishly suggested, I snobbishly repeat, a sense of the fundamental decencies is parceled out unequally at birth. And after boasting this way of my tolerance, I come to the admission that it has a limit. Conduct may be founded on the hard rock or the wet marshes, but after a certain point, I don't care what it's founded on. When I came back from the East last autumn, I felt that I wanted the world to be in uniform and at a sort of moral attention forever. I wanted no more riotous excursions with privileged glimpses into the human heart. Only Gatsby, the man who gives his name to this book, was exempt from my reaction. Gatsby, who represented everything for which I have an unaffected scorn. Okay, you just let me. I love this line. Ben. If personality is an unbroken series of successful gestures, then there was something gorgeous about him, some heightened sensitivity to the promises of life, as if he were related to one of those intricate machines that register earthquakes 10,000 miles away. This responsiveness had nothing to do with that flabby impressionability which is dignified under the name of the creative temperament. It was an extraordinary gift for hope, a romantic readiness such as I have never found in any other person, and which it is not likely I should ever find again. No, Gatsby turned out all right at the end. It is what preyed on Gatsby, what foul dust floated in the wake of his dreams, that temporarily closed out my interest in the abortive sorrows and short-winded elations of men. My family have been prominent, well-to-do people in the middle western city for 3 generations. The Carraways are something of a clan, and we have a tradition that we're descended from the Dukes of Buccleuch. But the actual founder of my line was my grandfather's brother, who came here in 1951, sent a substitute to the Civil War, and started the wholesale hardware business that my father carries on today. I never saw this great uncle, but I'm supposed to look like him, with special reference to the rather hard-boiled paintings that hang in Father's office. I graduated from New Haven in 1915. That's Yale University. Just a quarter of a century after my father. And a little later, I participated in that delayed Teutonic migration known as the Great War, World War I. I enjoyed the counter raid so thoroughly that I came back restless. Instead of being like the warm center of the world, the Middle West now seems like the ragged edge of the universe. So I decided to go east and learn the bond business, stocks and bonds. Land of opportunity. Everybody I knew was in the bond business, so I supposed it could support one more single man. All my aunts and uncles talked all it over as if they were choosing a prep school for me, and finally said, "Why, yees," with very grave, hesitant faces. Father agreed to finance me for a year, and after various delays, I came east. Permanently, I thought, in the spring of 1922. I'm so bad. I'm sorry about the scrolling. I'll work on it. The practical thing was to find rooms in the city, but it was a warm season, and I had just left a country of wide lawns and friendly trees. So when a young man at the office suggested that we take a house together in a commuting town, it sounded like a great idea. He found the house, a weather-beaten cardboard bungalow at $80 a month. But at the last minute, the firm ordered him to Washington, and I went out to the country alone. I had a dog. At least I had him for a few days until he ran away. And an old Dodge and a Finnish woman who made my bed and cooked breakfast and muttered Finnish wisdom to herself over the electric stove. It was lonely for a day or so until one morning some man more recently arrived than I stopped me on the road. "How do you get to West Egg Village?" he asked helplessly. "Ladies and gentlemen, as your teacher, it is my honor and privilege to introduce you to West Egg." I told him, and as I walked on, I was lonely no longer. I was a guide, a pathfinder, an original settler. He had casually conferred on me the freedom of the neighborhood. And so, with the sunshine and the great burst of leaves growing on the trees, just as things grow in fast movies, I had that familiar conviction that life was beginning over again with the summer. Thank God. There was so much to read, for one thing, and so much fine health to be pulled down out of the young, breath-giving air. I bought a dozen volumes on banking and credit and investment securities, and they stood on my shelf in red and gold like new money from the mint, promising to unfold the shining secrets that only Midas and Morgan and Maecenas knew. And I had the high intention of reading many other books besides. I was rather literary in college. One year I wrote a series of very solemn and obvious editorials for the Yale News. And now I was going to bring back all such things into my life and become again that most limited of all specialists, the well-rounded man. This isn't just an epigram. Life is much more successfully looked at from a single window, after all. It was a matter of chance that I should have rented a house in one of the strangest communities in North America. It was on that slender, riotous island which extends itself due east of New York, and where there are, among other natural curiosities, two unusual formations of land. 20 miles from the city, I know this sounds like, 20 miles from the city, I was a sophomore in high school reading this, I'm like, what? 20 miles from the city, a pair of enormous eggs, yes, eggs, identical in contour and separated only by a courtesy bay, just out into the most domesticated body of salt water in the Western Hemisphere, the great wet barnyard of Long Island Sound. They are not perfect ovals, like the egg in the Columbus story. They are both crushed flat at the contact end. But their physical resemblance must be a source of perpetual confusion to the gulls that fly overhead. To the wingless, a more arresting phenomenon is their dissimilarity in every particular except shape and size. I lived at West Egg, the less fashionable of the two, though this is a most superficial tag to express to the bizarre and not a little sinister contrast between them. My house was at the very tip of the egg, only 50 yards from the Sound, and squeezed between two huge places that rented for $12,000 or $15,000 a season. Nick Carraway lives in West Egg, the poorer part of Long Island Sound. He pays $80 a month for rent. Across the bay, and what we will now call East Egg, they're renting the homes for $15,000 to $20,000 a month in 1922. Please don't get frustrated by my scrolling. I'm doing my best. The one on my right was a colossal affair by any standard. That's the house. across the bay. It was a factual imitation of some Hotel de Ville in Normandy, with a tower on one side, spanking new under a thin beard of raw ivy, and a marble swimming pool, and more than 40 acres of lawn and garden. It was Gatsby's mansion. Or rather, as I didn't know Mr. Gatsby, it was a mansion inhabited by a gentleman of that name. My own house was an eyesore. Okay, if I do that again, we're done. But it was a small eyesore, and it had been overlooked. So I had a view of the water, a partial view of my neighbor's lawn, and the consoling proximity of millionaires, all for $80 a month. Oh boy, I know you do appreciate what he just said. He said for $80 a month, he gets to sit on his front stoop every morning, look across a bay at millionaires. Wow. Across the Courtesy Bay, the White Palace is a fashionable East Egg. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my privilege to welcome you to East Egg. Glittered along the water. And the history of the summer really begins on the evening. I drove over there to have dinner with the Tom Buchanans. Daisy was my second cousin once removed, and I'd known Tom in college. And just after the war, I spent 2 days with them in Chicago. Hey, shout out to Chicago. All right. Her husband, among various physical accomplishments, this is Tom Buchanan, make a note, had been one of the most powerful ends that ever played football at New Haven, a national figure in a way. One of those men who reached such an acute limited excellence at 21 that everything afterwards savors of anticlimax. His family were enormously wealthy. Even in college, his freedom with money was a matter for reproach. But now he'd left Chicago and come east in a fashion that rather took your breath away. For instance, he'd brought down a string of polo ponies from Lake Forest. That's Lake Forest, Illinois. It was hard to realize that a man in my own generation was wealthy enough to do that. Why they came east, I don't know. They had spent a year in France for no particular reason and then drifted here and there unrestfully wherever people played polo and were rich together. This was a permanent move, said Daisy over the telephone, but I didn't believe it. I had no sight into Daisy's heart, but I felt that Tom would drift on forever, seeking a little wistfully for the dramatic turbulence of some irrecoverable football game. The glory of the past. I was the quarterback in high school. And so it happened that on a warm, windy evening, I drove over to East Egg to see two old friends whom I scarcely knew at all. The house was even more elaborate than I expected, a cheerful red and white Georgian colonial mansion overlooking the bay. The lawn started at the beach and ran toward the front door for a quarter of a mile, jumping over sundials and brick walls and burning gardens. Finally, when it reached the house drifting up the side in bright vines as though from the momentum of its run, the front was broken by a line of French windows, glowing now with reflected gold and wide open to the warm, windy afternoon. And Tom Buchanan in riding clothes was standing with his legs apart on the front porch. He had changed since his New Haven years. Now he was a sturdy, straw-haired man of 30 with a rather hard mouth and a supercilious manner. Two shining, arrogant eyes had established dominance over his face and gave him the appearance of always leaning aggressively forward. Not even the effeminate swank of his riding clothes could hide the enormous power of that body. He seemed to fill those glistening boots until he strained the top lacing, and you could see a great pack of muscle shifting when his shoulder moved under his thin coat. It was a body capable of enormous leverage. A cruel body. His speaking voice, a gruff, husky tenor, added to the impression of fractiousness he conveyed. There was a touch of paternal contempt in him, even toward people he liked, and there were men at New Haven who hated his guts. Now, don't think my opinion on these matters is final, he seemed to say. Just because I'm stronger, this is Tom Buchanan talking. Just because I'm stronger and more of a man than you are? We were in the same senior society, and while we were never intimate, I always had the impression that he approved of me and wanted me to like him with some harsh, defiant wistfulness of his own. We talked for a few minutes on the sunny porch. I've got a Nice place here, he said, his eyes flashing about restlessly. Turning me around by one arm, he moved a broad, flat hand along the front vista, including in its sweep a sunken Italian garden, a half-acre of deep, pungent roses, and a snub-nosed motorboat that bumped the tide off the shore. It belonged to the oil man. He turned to me around again politely and abruptly. We'll go inside. We walked through a high hallway into a bright rosy-colored space, fragilely bound into the house by French windows at either end. The windows were ajar and gleaming white against the fresh grass outside that seemed to grow a little way into the house. A breeze blew through the room, blew curtains in at one end and out the other like pale flags, twisting them up toward a frosted wedding cake of the ceiling, and then rippled over the wine-colored rug, making a shadow on it as the wind does on the sea. Yes, his ceiling was sculpted in the impression of an Italian wedding cake. The only completely stationary object in the room was an enormous couch on which two young women were buoyed up as though upon an anchored balloon. They were both in white and their dresses were rippling and fluttering as if they had just been blown back and after a short flight around the house. I must have stood a few moments listening to the whip and snap of the curtains and the groan of a picture on the wall. Then there was a boom as Tom Buchanan shut the rear windows and the caught wind died out about the room and the curtains and the rugs and the two young women ballooned slowly to the floor. The younger of the two was a stranger to me. She was extended full length at her end of the divan, completely motionless and with her chin raised a little as if she were balancing something on it which was quite likely to fall. If she saw me out of the corner of her eyes, she gave no hint of it. Indeed, I was almost surprised into murmuring an apology for having disturbed her by coming in. The other girl, Daisy, that's Tom's wife, made an attempt to rise. She leaned slightly forward with a conscientious expression. Then she laughed, an absurd, charming little laugh. And I laughed too, and came forward into the room. This is Daisy speaking. I'm paralyzed with happiness. She laughed again, as if she had said something very witty. And she held my hand for a moment, looking up into my face, promising that there was no other one in the world she so much wanted to see. That was a way she had. She hinted in a murmur that the surname of the balancing girl was Baker. I've heard it said that Daisy's murmur was only to make people lean toward her, an irrelevant criticism that made it no less charming. At any rate, Miss Baker's lips fluttered. She nodded at me almost imperceptibly, and then quickly tipped her head back again. The object she was balancing had obviously tottered a little and given her something of a fright. Again, a sort of apology arose to my lips, almost an exhibition of complete self-sufficiency, draws a stunned tribute from me. We have five characters. We have Nick Carraway, who's the narrator, the man who lives for $80 a month, who came out to learn the bond business, who lives in West Egg. We have Tom Buchanan, who's so wealthy he owns a team of polo ponies while he was in college. We have his wife, Daisy, who's paralyzed with happiness. And we have Jordan Baker. It will soon be revealed. She's a professional tennis player. And what are they doing? They're reclining. I looked back at my cousin who began to ask me questions in her low, thrilling voice. It was the kind of voice that the ear follows up and down as if each speech is an arrangement of notes that will never be played again. Her face was sad and lovely with bright things in it, bright eyes and bright, passionate mouth. But there was an excitement in her voice that men who had cared for her found difficult to forget. A singing compulsion, a whispered, listen. A promise that she had done gay, exciting things just a while since and that there were gay, exciting things hovering in the next hour. I told her how I had stopped off in Chicago for a day on my way east and how a dozen people had sent their love through me. Do they miss me? She cried ecstatically. The whole town is desolate. All the cars have left the rear wheel painted black as a morning wreath, and there's a persistent wail all night along the North Shore. That's the North Shore of Chicago. That's where Mr. Edwards grew up. I grew up, by definition, in the North Shore. I will be driving to the North Shore later this evening to visit my mother. How gorgeous! Let's go back, Tom, tomorrow. Then she added irrelevantly, you ought to see the baby. They have a little baby. I'd like to. She's asleep. She's 2 years old. Have you ever seen her? Never. Well, you ought to see her. She's... Tom Buchanan, who had been hovering restlessly about the room, stopped and rested his hand on my shoulder. What you doing, Nick? I'm a bondman. Who with? I told him. Never heard of them, he remarked decisively. This annoyed me. You will, I answered shortly. You will if you stay in the East. Oh, I'll stay in the East, don't you worry, he said, glancing at Daisy, and then back at me, as if he were alert for something more. I'd be a goddamn fool to live anywhere else. At this point, Miss Baker said, absolutely, with such suddenness that I started. It was the first word she uttered since I came into the room. Evidently, it surprised her as much as it did me, for she yawned and with a series of rapid, deft movements stood up into the room. I'm stiff, she complained. I've been lying on that sofa for as long as I can remember. Don't look at me, Daisy retorted. I've been trying to get you to New York all afternoon. No thanks, said Miss Baker to the 4 cocktails just in from the pantry. I'm absolutely in training. Her host looked at her incredulously. You are? He took down his drink as if it were a drop in the bottom of a glass. How you ever get anything done is beyond me. I looked at Miss Baker, wondering what it was she got done. I enjoyed looking at her. She was a slender, small-breasted girl with an erect carriage, which she had accentuated by throwing her body backward at the shoulders like a young cadet. Her gray sun-strained eyes looked back at me with polite reciprocal curiosity out of a wan, charming, discontented face. It occurred to me now that I had seen her, or a picture of her, somewhere before. You live in West Egg? She remarked contemptuously. I know somebody there. I don't know a single... You must know Gatsby. Gatsby? Demanded Daisy. What Gatsby? Before I could reply that he was my neighbor, dinner was announced. Gatsby? What Gatsby? Wedging his tense arm imperatively under mine, Tom Buchanan compelled me from the room as though he were moving a checker to another square. Slender, languidly, their hands set lightly on their hips, the 2 young women preceded us out onto a rosy-colored porch open toward the sunset where 4 candles flickered on the table in the diminished wind. Why candles? Objected Daisy, frowning. She snapped them out with her fingers. In 2 weeks, it'll be the longest day in the year. This is Daisy speaking. She looked at us all radiantly. Do you always watch for the longest day of the year and then miss it? I always watch for the longest day in the year and then miss it. We ought to plan something, yawned Miss Baker. Sitting down at the tables as if she were getting into bed. All right, said Daisy. What do we plan? She turned to me helplessly. What do people plan? Before I could answer, her eyes fastened with an odd expression on her little finger. Look, she complained. I hurt it. We all looked. The knuckle was black and blue. Now you pay attention, juniors. You pay attention. We all looked. The knuckle was black and blue. You did it, Tom, she said accusingly. I know you didn't mean to, but you did do it. That's what I get for marrying a brute of a man. A great, big, hulking, physical specimen of a, I hate that word, hulking, objected Tom crossly. Even in kidding. Hulking, insisted Daisy. Sometimes she and Miss Baker better talked at once. Unobtrusively and with a bantering inconsequence that was never quite chatter, that was as cool as their white dresses and their impersonal eyes in the absence of all desire. They were here, and they accepted Tom and me, making only a polite, pleasant effort to entertain or to be entertained. They knew that presently dinner would be over, and a little later the evening too would be over and casually put away. It was sharply different from the West, where an evening was hurried from phase to phase towards its close in a continually disappointing anticipation, or else in sheer nervous dread of the moment itself. You make me feel uncivilized, Daisy, I confessed on my second glass of corky, but rather impressive claret. That's a wine. Can't you talk about crops or something? I meant nothing in particular by this remark, but it was taken up in an unexpected way. Civilization's going to pieces, broke out Tom violently. Pay attention. This is something, class. What I'm about to read to you is incredibly serious. This is Tom Buchanan speaking. I've gotten to be a terrible pessimist about things. Have you read The Rise of the Colored Empires by this man Goddard? That's a real book, folks. And we know what colored implies. Why, no, I answered, rather surprised by his tone. Well, it's a fine book, and everybody ought to read it. The idea is if we don't look out, the white race will be utterly submerged. It's all scientific stuff. It's been proved. Tom's getting very profound, said Daisy with an expression of unthoughtful sadness. He reads deep books with long words in them. What was that word well, these books are all scientific, insisted Tom, glancing at her impatiently. This fellow has worked out the whole thing. It's up to us who are the dominant race to watch out, or these other races will have control of things. We've got to beat them down, whispered Daisy, winking ferociously toward the fervent sun. Ladies and gentlemen, don't ever wonder, question, or scratch your head as to what eugenics is, because you just read the perfect definition of it. I've been trying for 2 years to implant that seed in your vocabulary. Tom Buchanan is the textbook definition of a eugenicist. That's bad. Bear with me. We're doing fine. I'll get you all out of here by 10:45. You ought to live in California, began Miss Baker, but Tom interrupted her by shifting heavily in his chair. This idea is that we're Nordics. I am, and you are, and you are, and you. And after an infinitesimal hesitation, he included Daisy with a slight nod, and she winked at me again. And we've produced all the things that make civilization, science and art and all that. Do you see? There was something pathetic in his concentration, as if his complacency, more acute than of old, was not enough to him anymore. When, almost immediately, the telephone rang inside and the butler left the porch, Daisy seized upon the momentary interruption and leaned toward me. I'll tell you a family secret, she whispered enthusiastically. It's about the butler's nose. Do you want to hear about the butler's nose? That's why I came over tonight. Well, he wasn't always a butler. He used to be the silver polisher. This is kind of interesting. He used to be the silver, that's their butler. He used to be the silver polisher for some people in New York that had a silver service for 200 people. He had to polish it from morning till night until finally it began to affect his nose. Things went from bad to worse, suggested Miss Baker. Yes, things went from bad to worse until finally he had to give up his position. For a moment, the last sunshine fell with romantic affection upon her glowing face. Her voice compelled me forward breathlessly as I listened. Then the glow faded, each light deserting her with the lingering regret like children leaving a pleasant street at dusk. The butler came back and murmured something close to Tom's ear, whereupon Tom frowned, pushed back his chair, and without a word went inside. As if his absence quickened something within her, Daisy leaned forward again, her voice glowing and singing. The butler polished so much silver tableware and fine dinnerware that in the process of rubbing his nose, he poisoned his nose with silver polish and his nose turned silver. Pretty much a paraphrase there. I guess the question I would ask in 1922 is it a fair assumption to assume that was an African American butler? I mean, the butlers in the White House were mostly African American at that time. I'd love to see you at my table, Nick. You remind me of a rose, an absolute rose, doesn't he? She turned to Miss Baker for confirmation. An absolute rose. This was untrue. I'm not even faintly like a rose. She was only extemporizing, but a stirring warmth flowed from her as if her heart was trying to come out to you, concealed in one of those breathless, thrilling words. Then suddenly she threw her napkin on the table and excused herself and went into the house. Miss Baker and I exchanged a short glance, consciously devoid of meaning. I was about to speak when she sat up alertly and said, "Shh," in a warning voice. A subdued, impassioned murmur was audible in the room beyond, and Miss Baker leaned forward, unashamed, trying to hear. The murmur trembled on the verge of coherence, sank down, mounted excitedly, and then ceased altogether. "This Mr. Gatsby you spoke of is my neighbor?" I said. "Don't talk. I want to hear what happens." "Is something happening?" I inquired innocently. "You mean to say you don't know?" said Miss Baker, honestly surprised. "I thought everybody knew." "I don't." "Why," she said hesitantly, "Tom's got some woman in New York. Tom's cheating on his wife, Daisy." "Got some woman?" I repeated blankly. Miss Baker nodded. "She might have the decency not to telephone him at dinner time, don't you think?" Almost before I had grasped her meaning, there was the flutter of a dress and the crunch of a leather boot, and Tom and Daisy were back at the table. "It couldn't be helped," cried Daisy with tense gaiety. She sat down, glancing searchingly at Miss Baker and then at me, and continued, "I looked outdoors for a minute, and it's very romantic outdoors. There's a bird on the lawn, and I think it must be a nightingale come over on the Canard or the White Star Line. That's the ship that brought the Titanic over. He's singing away." Her voice sang. "It's romantic, isn't it, Tom?" "Very romantic," he said, and then miserably to me, "If it's light enough after dinner, I want to take you down to the stables." The telephone rang inside, startlingly, and as Daisy shook her head decisively at Tom, the subject of the stables, in fact, all subjects, vanished into air. Among the broken fragments of the last 5 minutes at table, I remember the candles being lit again, pointlessly, and I was conscious of wanting to look squarely at everyone and yet to avoid all eyes. I couldn't guess what Daisy and Tom were thinking, but I doubt if Miss Baker, who seemed to have mastered a certain hearty skepticism, was able utterly to put this fifth guest's shrill, metallic urgency out of mind. To a certain temperament, the situation might have seemed intriguing. My own instinct was to telephone immediately for the police. The horse, needless to say, were not mentioned again. Tom and Miss Baker, with several feet of twilight between them, strolled back into the library, as if to a vigil beside a perfectly tangible body. While trying to look pleasantly interested and a little deaf, I followed Daisy around a chain of connecting verandas to the porch in front. In its deep gloom, we sat down side by side on a wicker settee. Daisy took her face in her hands, as if feeling its lovely shape, and her eyes moved gradually out into the velvet dusk. I saw that turbulent emotions possessed her, so I asked what I thought would be some sedative questions about her little girl. We don't know each other very well, Nick, she said suddenly. Even if we are cousins, you didn't come to my wedding. I wasn't back from the war. That's true, she hesitated. Well, I've had a very bad time, Nick, and I'm pretty cynical about everything. Evidently, she had reason to be. I waited, but she didn't say any more, and after a moment, I returned rather feebly to the subject of her daughter. I suppose she talks and eats and everything. Oh, yes. She looked at me absently. Listen, Nick, let me tell you what I said when she was born. Would you like to hear? Pay attention. Very much. It'll show you how I've gotten to feel about things. Well, she was less than an hour old, and Tom was God knows where. I woke up out of the ether with an utterly abandoned feeling and asked the nurse right away if it was a boy or a girl. She told me it was a girl, and so I turned my head away and wept. All right, I said, I'm glad it's a girl, and I hope she'll be a fool. That's the best thing a girl can be in this world. A beautiful little fool. You see, I think everything's terrible anyhow, she went on in a convinced way. Everybody thinks so. The most advanced people, and I know, have been everywhere and seen everything and done everything. Her eyes flashed around her in a defiant rather like Tom's, and she laughed with thrilling scorn. Sophisticated. God, I'm sophisticated. The instant her voice broke off, ceasing to compel my attention. We're almost done, 5 more pages. My belief. I felt the basic insincerity of what she had said. It made me uneasy, as though the whole evening had been a trick of some sort to exact a contributory emotion from me. I waited, and sure enough, in a moment, she looked at me with an absolute smirk on her lovely face, as if she had asserted her membership in a rather distinguished secret society to which she and Tom belonged. Inside the Crimson Room, bloomed with light, Tom and Miss Baker sat at either end of the long couch, and she read aloud to him from the Saturday Evening Post, the words murmurous and uninflected running together in a soothing tune. The lamplight, bright on his boots and dull on the autumn leaf yellow of her hair, glinted along the paper as she turned a page with a flutter of slender muscles in her arms. When we came in, she held us silent for a moment with a lifted hand. To be continued, she said, tossing the magazine on the table, in our very next issue. Her body asserted itself with a restless movement of her knee, and she stood up. 10 o'clock, she remarked, apparently finding the time on the ceiling. Time for this good girl to go to bed. Jordan's going to play in the tournament tomorrow. That's a tennis tournament, explained Daisy, over at Westchester. Oh, you're Jordan Baker? I knew now why her face was familiar. Its pleasing, contemptuous expression had looked at me as from many rotogravure pictures of the sporting light at Asheville and Hot Springs and Palm Beach. I had heard some story of her, too, a critical and pleasant story, but what it was I had forgotten long ago. Good night, she said softly. Wake me at 8, won't you? Just in case we get confused later, I'm going to add some plot. He heard about Jordan in a newspaper article or a rumor. Jordan Baker was accused of cheating at tennis. Good night, she said softly. Wake me at 8, won't you? If you'll get up. I will. Good night, Mr. Carraway. See you anon. Of course you will, confirmed Daisy. In fact, I think I'll arrange a marriage. Come over often, Nick, and I'll sort of, fling you together. You know, lock you up accidentally in linen closets and push you out to sea in a boat, and all that sort of thing. Good night, called Miss Baker from the stairs. I haven't heard a word. She's a nice girl, said Tom after a moment. They oughtn't to let her run around the country this way. Who oughtn't to? Inquired Daisy coldly. Her family. Her family is one aunt at about 1,000 years old. Besides, Nick's going to look after her, aren't you, Nick?
She's going to spend lots of weekends out here this summer. I think the home influence will be very good for her.
Daisy and Tom looked at each other for a moment in silence. Is she from New York? I asked quickly.
From Louisville.
That's Louisville, Kentucky. Our white girlhood was passed together there. Our beautiful white.
Did you give Nick a little heart-to-heart talk on the veranda? Demanded Tom suddenly.
Did I? She looked at me. I can't seem to remember. But I think we talked about the Nordic race. Yes, I'm sure we did. It sort of crept up on us, and first thing you know...
Don't believe everything you hear, Nick,
he advised me. I said lightly that I heard nothing at all, and a few minutes later I got up to go home. They came to the door with me and stood side by side in a cheerful square of light. As I started my motor, Daisy peremptorily called, "Wait! I forgot to ask you something, and it's important. We heard you were engaged to a girl out west."
That's right, corroborated Tom kindly. We heard that you were engaged.
It's libel. I'm too poor. But we heard it, insisted Daisy, surprising me by the opening up again in a flower-like way. We heard it from 3 people, so it must be true. Of course, I knew that they were referring to, but I wasn't even vaguely engaged. The fact that gossip had published the banns was one of the reasons I had to come east. You can't stop going with an old friend on account of rumors. On the other hand, I had no intention of being rumored into marriage. Their interest rather touched me and made them less remotely rich. Nevertheless, I was confused and a little disgusted as I drove away. It seemed to me that the thing for Daisy to do was to rush out of the house, child in arms, but apparently there was no such intentions in her head. As for Tom, the fact that he, quote, had some woman in New York was really less surprising than that he had been depressed by a book. Something was making him nibble at the edge of stale ideas, as if his sturdy physical egotism no longer nourished his peremptory heart. We're winding down. Already it was deep summer on roadhouse roofs, and in the front of wayside garages, where new red gas pumps sat out in pools of light. And when I reached my estate at West Egg, I ran the car under its shed and sat for a while on an abandoned grass roller in the yard. The wind had blown off, leaving a loud, bright night with wings beating in the trees and a persistent organ sound as the full bellows of the earth blew the frogs full of life. The silhouette of a moving cat wavered across the moonlight, and turning my head to watch it, I saw that I was not alone. 50 feet away, a figure had emerged from the shadow of my neighbor's mansion and was standing with his hands in his pockets regarding the silver pepper of the stars. Something in his leisurely movement and the secure position of his feet upon the lawn suggested that it was Mr. Gatsby himself, come out to determine what share was his of our local heavens. I decided to call to him. Miss Baker had mentioned him at dinner, and that would do for an introduction. But I didn't call to him, for he gave a sudden intimation that he was content to be alone. He stretched out his arms toward the dark water in a curious way, and for as I was from him, I could have sworn he was trembling. Involuntarily, I glanced seaward, and I distinguished nothing except a single green light, minute and far away, that might have been the end of a dock. When I looked once more for Gatsby, he had vanished. And I was alone, again, in the unquiet darkness. I'm coming back to you for recap. And there's chapter 2. Yeah, that was amazing. Don't say that wasn't amazing. It's part of a canon of literature that's a must-read for any high school student. I will at some point want to see some written work from you, maybe some quote analysis. But I want to go back to our original conversation from CPS Virtual Library. I'm asking you to stay at 10:45. Your names are gonna go in not my little black book, and I don't know why everything has to in my big black book. And there's your A. Here, I'm going to start calling you, because there's 9 of you, and you might not be here tomorrow. You might skip out. I don't know. But right now, the 9 of you are going to be known as the AP Literature Supreme Court, because you will judge these characters. You are the Supreme Court of PMA. I know you only read Gatsby once, but the very first thing Nick Carraway says on the first page is, I'm not going to judge my characters. I'm going to reserve judgment. But then he notes how hard it is not to judge these characters, because they're so wanton, selfish, lazy, reckless, hypocritical, privileged. And slowly but surely, F. Scott Fitzgerald introduces us to each character and gives us an insight. Tom, the reluctant narrator, who tries to be fair. Daisy, his second cousin, who is paralyzed with happiness, who, when she saw that her baby was a girl, said, I want her to grow up to be a beautiful little fool. There's your feminist critique. There's your critical feminist theory. What mother would want her child to grow up in ignorance in a world of superficial beauty? Then her husband, Tom, who's so wealthy that he owns a team of polo ponies. That's usually reserved for the princes of England. He's hulking. He's so brutal that he grabs Daisy's hands accidentally and she leaves a bruise on her knuckles. And she says, you did it, Tom, you hulking brute of a man. And he says, I hate that word, hulking. And she repeats it, hulking. Fun marriage. And he's cheating on her, by the way. We'll get to the affair. Then you got Jordan Baker, who's just lying on the couch in the middle of the day. Too tired from God knows what. Resting because she's got a big match. Professional tennis player. Soon to be accused of cheating in a tournament. These are the characters that define the literary movement that coexists in the 1920s with the pseudo, which means fake, scientific movement of eugenics. The eugenics movement approximately started in the 1920s, reached its peak about 1927 to 1942. And it's all over Gatsby. This concept that there's a dominant race, this concept that the white race needs to protect itself from the other races. It is so sad and tragic that that conversation continues today, that it's never been resolved. That there's this fundamental fear among the white race, at least a portion of the white race. I don't share that fear. I'm not afraid of other cultures. I would learn. I actually, and I'll say one thing. Don't fault me later. Please don't fault me later. I actually feel that I should learn Spanish to talk to some of the Spanish-speaking families, and that's a sort of a minority opinion, no pun intended. A lot of people think Americans should speak American or English, or immigrants should learn English. I'm trying to learn Spanish. I can prove it. It's right here. I went out and bought a book called Teach Yourself Spanish, and you can see my bookmark. Yo soy el maestro de debate. See, where the white supremacists are afraid of other cultures because they think they're going to take away from the white race, they're going to all these ridiculous fears. They're going to take jobs. They're going to take away their freedom or whatever, their luxury. I don't know. I'm trying to embrace other cultures. I'm going to say one other thing. And when you judge me, don't judge me harshly. Be more like Nick Carraway. Reserve judgment. Nick Carraway uses 2 words in the first chapter. He says judgment and tolerance. You need to be tolerant. And you need to be careful how, when, and who you judge, lest you be judged. But I'll tell you something. Where I went to high school, in the North Shore. I went to high school in Wilmette. That's in the center of the North Shore. It's one of the richest communities in North America. I out of the 1,000 or so boys from my school, or whatever, many thousands, 3,000-4,000. Every other kid should have been named Tom Buchanan. There were no girls, but there was a lot of people from my school who felt that they deserved this privilege. There was a lot of people who grew up racist. Right or wrong, I am from the North Shore. Right or wrong. Okay, now here's what I want to do. I really hope you enjoyed that. That is some of the most powerful reading for young people, and you're at the right age to read it. Here's what I want to hear from you before I put your name in this list of the Supreme Court. I just want to hear yes, no, or maybe. Nadalyn, do you think you can commit to 9 more sessions at approximately 1 hour and 15 minutes a session for the next?
Yes.
Grace,
Sure.
Gracie, same question.
Yes.
Keith. Keith. Angela.
Maybe.
Evelyn.
Yes.
Daniel.
Maybe.
Abel.
Probably.
Janaya.
No, Mr. Edwards, this is Keith.
Yes.
Keith, was that a yes, no, or maybe?
Yes.
Julietta.
It is a possibility.
Okay, for the people that say yes, I want your yes to mean yes, so which means I will hold another Google Hangouts on Thursday at 9:30. Nobody said no. For the people that said maybe, if you do disappear, I will send you an email and or written instruction on Google Classroom on how to access The Great Gatsby through the Google search at Planet eBooks, because you can read it by yourself. It's 193 pages. It took me approximately 45 minutes to read a chapter. 45 minutes times 10 chapters, come on. To read a novel that explores everything that we need to discuss in a world of critical race theory, in a world of injustice, in a world that condemns white privilege, please. I'm not going to change. I'm not going to waver. I'm not going to compromise. I had 1,000 choices and I chose this one because it's relevant. On Thursday, on 9:30 a.m., I will continue chapter 2 of Gatsby. Okay? Got it?
Yep.
And now we can go. And I will invite you all. Oh, I got to take your names down. Don't leave, don't leave, don't leave. No matter what, remember I told you you're banking credit for the A for lit.
Hugo left. Make sure you get him.
I'm sorry, Keith?
Hugo left.
People left?
Hugo.
Hugo was on the call?
Yes.
I so apologize. I didn't see that. I got Hugo, Nadalyn, Gracie, Keith, Angela, Evelyn Rodriguez, Daniel Mendoza, Abel, Janaya, and Julietta. I really hope you join me. I really hope, because you're going to
Mr. Edwards, I'm here too.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, that's just me being sloppy with my eyes.
Edwards, you should open up the list of the people that are here because there's like 16
Yeah,
or
you're
15.
missing
Right,
me
you're
too,
missing like
Mr.
10,
Edwards.
dude.
Oh, oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, I didn't mean to be disrespectful. I didn't see any of that. Oh, I'm so sorry. I only saw what was on my screen. Thank you. I will call out attendance now. So you're the Supreme Court of 19. I got Abel, Aldair, Angela, Daniel, Evelyn Reyes. You're on the list now. Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't see that. I got Evelyn Rodriguez. I got Gracie. I got Janaya. I got Julieta. I got Keith. Marco, you're being added to the list.
Epic.
I really didn't mean the oversight. Raul, you're being added to the list. And Rosalind, you're on the list. And Nadalyn, you're on the list. And I put Hugo on. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. That's impressive. You're going to want to stick with me. I can't sit here and try to con you, try to hoodwink you, bamboozle you, or run you amok. You will get a sense of accomplishment from reading Gatsby over the next 9 Google Hangouts, knowing we have one under our belt. You'll feel empowered. You'll feel smart. You'll feel like all that time we lost during the stay-at-home order and the school closure, you're making up for that. You'll start to see the light of day. You'll start to feel the college vibe. You'll start to say, I got this. This novel gets insane. We are only in chapter 1. Wait till he throws parties. You ain't even been to a party if you haven't been to Gatsby's party. You haven't even seen how they party. It's the mother flipping jazz age, man. They're going to start drinking 10 a.m. Don't you? I'm recording this. All right, I care about you so much. Do the jazz hands. I care about you so much, but I just did a whole lot of reading. My throat is scratchy. I need to go chill. I care about you. That goes without saying. I will see everybody Thursday at 9:30 a.m. for Chapter 2. Please come back. Have a wonderful day, juniors, incoming seniors, AP English Literature class. All right, bye.
Bye, Edwards.
Bye.
See you later.
All right, be chill.